All right. Well, thank you, Sages, for having me here today. I will be giving a talk on how to effectively utilize Twitter and LinkedIn, using it for live chats, public health messaging and education, how to use hashtags and professional development and marketing purposes. I have nothing to disclose. I think it's probably a good thing I don't monetize my tweets for this. Disclaimer, I do like to say I'm not quite sure how I got here, in the sense of when I joined Twitter about a year ago, I did not intend to have a massive platform. I intended to be a little bit more of a lurker and use it as a networking opportunity, but it's turned into something a little bit bigger that's allowed me to have a platform and reach out to a lot of different people. So I am glad that I am here. So this is going to be more of a talk of what I've found has been useful in helping me get to the place I am today. And as for LinkedIn, this is going to be more of a Twitter talk because I kind of treat LinkedIn like I treat my Facebook. I log in, I accept things, and I log back out. So why do I use Twitter? Initially, I started using Twitter as a way to network. Going into my first research years, one of our chief residents said it's a great way to build connections with people, especially across the country. And this was in the setting of I was going to start my research time in the middle of the COVID pandemic, so I knew all of our conferences were going to be canceled and I wouldn't be able to meet people. So it was my way to be able to reach out and begin to spread the word about how to use social media and get those connections for when I apply to fellowship next year. It's a great way to use, disseminate information, whether it be about bills, such in this case, that are being passed in different states, whether it be about COVID information or treatment options for different vascular interventions. I just happen to be following vascular pages. It's a great way to get that information across in a succinct way, but also to create conversation in a very quick way. I like it for entertainment purposes as well. This is probably one of the funniest pages I follow. Happens to be your guys's. I also use Twitter for engagement with the community. I do a lot of activism and a lot of organizing. And a lot of the other doctors on Twitter also use it as ways to fundraise and get word out and help support other doctors and other their own organizations and platforms. In doing research in the middle of a pandemic, it's been a great source of community as well. I've made a lot of really good friends on Twitter. You know, as we've lifted some of the travel bans, I've actually been able to meet some of these people, you know, and visit them at their home. They've been able to come visit me. So it's been a really great way to create community in a world that's been very, very isolated for the last 18 months. And anybody who follows me also knows that I tweet about the most random things that just pop into my head. So that's the risk you take when you follow me on Twitter. So just in general, when I just was told by my mentors that I was going to give this talk, they all said, well, it's going to be great because I don't know how to use Twitter. So this is my basic tutorial. This is where you put your message. You have up to 280 characters now to get a message across, but I found that the most effective way is to get it in the most succinct way possible. So usually you try and undershoot that 280 characters and just get it across in one tweet. This little box here helps you determine how much of those 280 characters you have left. If you decide that you need more than 280 characters, you can create a thread that links all of your tweets together by clicking this little plus arrow down on the bottom. And that's how you get those situations where people have a series of 10 to 11 tweets and they have a whole story that comes out of it, which could be very helpful. I like to add pictures to my tweets, so that's what that little image is. Anybody who also follows me knows I love using GIFs. I hear Gen Z is not a big fan of those, but most of Twitter is millennials and Gen X, so we keep using our GIFs. You can also do polls on Twitter, which is actually very helpful. You can poll your followers and figure out information, or just in general, whatever you want to use to get an opinion really quickly. This is how you add emojis. And then in a really useful way, especially if you're using your Twitter to promote something, you can schedule tweets to go out at a certain time. Especially if you're going to be traveling, you can set it to go off at a certain time, or if you're going to be in a meeting or something like that, or you want to make sure that someone knows something, or you just want to use a reminder, it's really great to have that. You can also change the settings on who can reply to your tweets. You can use it so everyone can reply, or you can set it to where only people you follow can reply or people that are tagged. This can definitely decrease the amount of trolls that you get on Twitter, which can be very helpful and also a very big help for your mental health. And if you decide that sometimes you want to tweet and you're in a bad mood or you're angry, you can save your tweets for later, and then you can go and find them and determine if they're actually appropriate to be tweeted. It's a great way to vent, but also make sure you don't get yourself in trouble. And when it's all said and done, hit the tweet button and you've gone live. One of the big things that you see on Twitter is the use of hashtags. And so it's a really good way to create links between topics over a series of time or a period. It's a way that you can do these live chats. I know most of us have seen the live chats on Twitter over the last year, and how you can have, quote unquote panels on Twitter. AWS uses them a lot. And when you're using, doing live tweet sessions, you can use them so people can follow along. They can just follow the hashtag, and then they can see all of the responses that are coming in. They can see all the questions and respond accordingly. It's also a great way to link groups of people together. The I Look Like a Surgeon movement is still going very strong on Twitter. And if you click on that link, you can see all the different photos and posts that a lot of the female surgeons are putting out there. And, it's a great way to, get a little inspiration. And another thing that we use is we use hashtag MedTwitter or hashtag academic Twitter. And so it's a good way to get people's attention because they do follow these hashtags and they use it as a way to, again, link all this information for you. I think most recently the best thing that I've seen is the hashtag MedGrad wishlist. It was a way for all of us to buy fourth-year medical students last year graduation presents and help them afford the cost of moving across the country in the middle of a pandemic. So I think that's another great way that Twitter has been very useful. A key tip is to use capitals for each word when you're using a hashtag. It helps our friends that have visual disabilities to be able to see the hashtags and read them much more easily. So it's just one of those Twitter etiquette things that if you're aware of it, it's very helpful to use. So we have my 6 Twitter rules. Number 1 is decide what's the purpose of your page. I have what we call I call it a pseudo-professional page, in the fact that I will tweet about things that are in medicine, but I also tweet about sports and whatever else comes to mind. Some people use their Twitter pages strictly for professional reasons, that's fine. Some people use them strictly for personal reasons. It just depends on what you want. And then people also have to decide what your brand is. I don't personally think I have a brand on Twitter. I just kind of am myself. But, some people use it, like I said, they use it Dr. Pimple Popper uses hers to get her brand out there and talk about all the things that she does on her show. And that's how she's branded herself as Dr. Pimple Popper. But you have to make up your mind of what you want to be in that process. Number 2 is be thoughtful in what you say. As we've said multiple times today, once it goes out on the internet, it's there. So I like to tweet with the idea that words have power and that people are watching me and they're learning from me. So I try to be very thoughtful in the things that I put out onto my Twitter, and I want to know that, and if my grandma saw my Twitter, would she approve of it? Or if I was 10, 15 years down the road, would I still approve of the way I handled situations on Twitter? A way to build a Twitter presence is just engage with your followers. There are people on the other side of a computer. Talk back to them, create situations where they can tweet back to you. I like to, every once in a while, reintroduce myself to Twitter and tweet with my new followers, find out a little bit about them. And it creates a way you can go back and forth and you create these very genuine relationships that way. You can tag them in threads when you are talking about something that affects them, and you guys can have these very fun interactions, and it brings in more people and it creates a little bit of a community each time. Set boundaries to your engagement. I do think that there is a way to have thoughtful discourse on Twitter. I know there's always the conversations about Twitter mobs and people attacking each other. I think with a little bit of nuance, you can have those conversations in a respectful manner. But you also have to understand that not everybody is there to have that conversation. There are people that are strictly there to troll you, and that is how you have to realize that. And so that brings me to number 5, is how to deal with the trolls. I personally like to mute them. I don't like to give them the satisfaction of knowing that I blocked them. It basically works the same way. I don't really know they exist anymore, but they don't get the satisfaction knowing they got under my skin. But a healthy block is also very useful. But in general, I don't engage with trolls. I don't recommend it because it's only going to affect your mental health and make your experience a more negative on Twitter. So I agree with Dr. Jackson in saying just be kind on Twitter. It's the best way to go. And then in general, it's very useful to set a daily use limit on your social media. I have a timer set where I can't be on Twitter on my phone for more than 2 hours over a 24-hour period, because otherwise you can get very much sucked into it. And then I will also spend active days not tweeting, just engaging in the rest of the world and the real world around me instead of my virtual world. And those are my rules. follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you decide. And I had to sneak a GIF in there. Thank you so much for your time.